In my previous life, I was executed by 1,000 cuts. The dull pain of each slice of the blade brought me to the brink of collapse, and the dungeon echoed with my agonized screams. Just then, Shen Jiayuan, holding hands with my brother and my fiancé, flaunted their affection right before my eyes. Watching my mutilated and pitiful state, Shen Jiayuan laughed with unrestrained delight. I come from a civilized era thousands of years in the future. What could a foolish, feudal woman like you? Confined to the inner chambers, possibly used to compete with me, I closed my eyes in despair, murmuring something under my breath, which made Shen Jiayuan lean in curiously to listen. The next second, I mustered all my strength to lunge forward, sinking my teeth fiercely into her throat until I tore away a chunk of flesh. Watching her throat gush with unstoppable blood, I laughed maniacally. Bitch, come and join me in death. My brother flew into a rage and instantly ran me through with his sword. TSK, that hurts, but all things considered, it wasn't a bad deal. Not only did I get my revenge, but I also died a swift death. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. However, I never expected that when I opened my eyes again, I would see a familiar scene. In the back garden, Shen Jiayuan stood by the lotus pond, dressed in a plain white gauze skirt. Seeing my bewildered expression, she curled her lips into a smile, her eyes full of provocation. From today onward, everything you possess will be taken away from you, one by one. As soon as the words fell, she suddenly slapped herself hard across the face. In the blink of an eye, a glaring red mark instantly appeared on Shen Jiayuan's fair cheek, making her look fragile, pitiful, and miserable. Then she took half a step back toward the riverbank, spread her arms, and laughed. Miss Lin, do you think you can bear the charge of murdering the general's only surviving daughter? My breathing grew heavier, my heart filled with shock and terror. Somehow, I had been reborn on the very day Shen Jiayuan framed me. It was from this spring banquet in my past life that I became the despised, jealous woman scorned by everyone in the capital. In the end, he was utterly disgraced step by step, abandoned by all, and died a death by 1,000 cuts, seeing me standing there in a daze. Shen Jiayuan let out a scornful laugh. They all say that us time-traveling women can't compete with noble ladies groomed for over a decade by aristocratic families, but I think you're nothing special either. From the bamboo grove not far away, faint sounds of chasing and laughter could be heard. She gave me a provocative raised eyebrow and a smile, then plunged into the lotus pond with a loud splash. A huge spray of water drenched me completely. She flailed desperately in the water, pretending to scream for help at the top of her lungs. Seeing her act so shamelessly and annoyingly, I instantly felt my blood boil with rage. Fine, I was already seething with resentment after my miserable death, and now you've gone and thrown yourself right onto the blade. I bent down and grabbed Shen Jiayuan by the hair, saying with a murderous tone, Xiao Li, stop spacing out, come and lend a hand. Xiao Li snapped out of her shock and hesitantly reached out her hand, helping me haul Shen Jiayuan out of the water by force. I casually slapped Shen Jiayuan across the face and sneered, it's still too early to decide whether you can outmatch me or not. She struggled in pain, looking at me with disbelief, seemingly caught off guard by my swift and decisive counterattack. I had no time to wait for her reaction. My hands were tightly gripping Shen Jiayuan's hair, while Xiao Li was pulling her arm with all her might, amid her heart-wrenching screams. We quickly dragged her next to the outhouse. Help! Help! MPH! Seeing that Shen Jiayuan's screams were growing more and more agonized, and to keep from drawing attention, I grabbed a handful of dirt and stuffed it into her mouth. Shen Jiayuan, do you really enjoy getting slapped and soaked in cold water that much? Then I'll satisfy you. Xiao Li, hold her down firmly for me. I let out a cold laugh, rolled up my sleeves, and swung my palm hard toward her pale little face. Slap, 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 slap. After more than a dozen slaps, Shen Jiayuan's face was already swollen like a pig's head. She struggled and sobbed like a madwoman, even losing both her shoes in the process, yet she couldn't break free in the slightest. I shook my numb hand and dragged her by the hair toward the outhouse cesspit. Shen Jiayuan spat out the debris in her mouth and screamed in a muffled, terrified voice, Lin Pianyue, how dare you? I laughed wildly. From this day on, there is nothing in this world that I, Lin Pianyue, dare not do. With a splash, I kicked Shen Jiayuan into the manure pit. Help! Shen Jiayuan retched frantically, her plain white gauze dress soaked with yellowish-brown filth. For a moment, the air was filled with a foul stench, and I had to take out a handkerchief to lightly cover my nose. Every time she was about to climb up, Xiao Li would use a wooden stick to push her back down. Only after I had fully enjoyed Shen Jiayuan's wretched state did I clap my hands, turn around, and leave gracefully. The maid Xiao Li followed closely behind me, patting her chest with lingering fear as she said, Miss, isn't this a bit too much? I laughed it off indifferently. It's fine. Who told me to be the vicious supporting female character? So, this is all I deserve to do, in my past life. I clearly did nothing wrong, yet I had to explain and clarify every single day. I've had enough of being a pushover. In this life, I choose to go crazy. In my previous life, my crime was having an affair with the hostage prince of the enemy nation. At the Mid-Autumn Palace banquet, my beloved fiancé coaxed me into drinking a cup of apricot blossom wine. When I woke up, I was lying naked in the arms of the enemy prince. With a crowd of officials and noble women gathered at the door, under my terrified and helpless gaze, my fiancé Hanichi looked at me with disappointment and disdain. Jing was right after all. You really are having an affair with the hostage prince from the enemy state, and you even leaked our military's marching route. I struggled to break free from the man's embrace behind me and hurried to explain. No, I didn't. Before I could finish my words, Shen Jiayuan stepped out from behind Hanichi. Her frail body swayed unsteadily, tears welling in her eyes as she accused, after father's death. I couldn't help but wonder. He was a great general who triumphed in countless battles, so how could his death be so suspicious, so absurd? But now I understand why you've always targeted me, even going so far as to try to kill me. Miss Lin, doesn't your conscience ache in the dead of night? Father and his men fought bloody battles on the front lines, defending our country. Yet they lost their lives because of your affair and betrayal, and you even sought to harm his only remaining bloodline in this world. My father and those soldiers, they were wronged. After pouring out her heart in anguish, Shen Jiayuan's eyes rolled back and she fainted. Hanichi, heart-aching, held her tightly in his arms. Conspiring with the enemy, betraying the nation, and engaging in illicit affairs before marriage, Shen Jiayuan dumped all the dirty deeds she had done onto me, nailing me firmly to the pillar of shame. The crowd at the door was filled with righteous indignation. A torrent of harsh and piercing words swarmed towards me. And this is supposed to be the capital's top talented lady. Who would have thought her heart could be so vicious? Didn't I tell you long ago? I saw with my own eyes. She slapped Shen Jiayuan and then pushed her into the lotus pond. I heard that Lin Pianyue once secretly had an abortion. Heavens above. What a disgrace to the Lin family, to have given birth to such a wanton woman. It was that very night that my beloved uncle, the emperor, was suddenly struck by a mysterious poison and fell into a coma. Hanichi and my elder brother, to eliminate any future trouble and to win Shen Jiayuan's favor, secretly imprisoned me in the dungeon and ordered that I be executed by 1,000 cuts. The proud daughter of heaven instantly fell into the mud beneath my feet. I was filled with grievances. With nowhere to turn, the cold wind blew past, snapping me back to my senses. I took Xiao Li to the side hall to change out of our wet clothes, tidied up our appearance, and then leisurely made our way to the banquet. The thought of Shen Jiayuan's pure and innocent face covered in feces makes me unable to hold back my laughter. As soon as I sat down, Princess Jiari tugged at my sleeve and asked curiously, "Where did you go? Why did you even change your clothes?" I said casually, "It's nothing. I just got a little dirty when I threw Shen Jiayuan into the manure pit earlier." "Oh, okay." She suddenly stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widened abruptly, staring at me with a shocked expression. "What?" I said nonchalantly. She insisted on slapping herself and jumping into the lotus pond. I was afraid she wouldn't have enough fun, so I simply threw her into the manure pit. Is that so?" I nodded seriously and said, "Yes, that's right." Princess Jiari swallowed nervously, her expression a mix of shock and doubt. Just as she was about to speak, a tall figure suddenly appeared before her. I looked up and saw that it was none other than my dear fiancé, Hanichi. His gaze swept casually over the group of noble ladies before a trace of concern flickered deep in his eyes. He then asked tentatively, "Pianyue, Did you have a good time today? By the way, not long ago, Sister Shin Jiayuan said she had a gift for you. You haven't seen her. I looked at his expression and narrowed my eyes thoughtfully. It seems he can't find Shin Jiayuan. Indeed, Shin Jiayuan is most adept at using her pitiful face to play the victim and gain sympathy. But now that I've beaten her into a swollen mess and covered her in filth, she must be unwilling to show her face in public. I remember in my past life, whenever Shin Jiayuan framed me, Han Ichi would always jump out to confirm my guilt. Either he would urge me to apologize to Shin Jiayuan, or he would hypocritically tell me to be magnanimous and not make life difficult for that orphan girl all the time. Now that I think about it, the time they secretly got together was earlier than I had imagined. After all, in my previous life, in this very situation, he always showed up belatedly just when I was at a loss for words, and I would end up in an even more embarrassing predicament. At this thought, I slowly stood up and looked him straight in the eye, under his hesitant and uneasy gaze. I gave him a cold smile, then he suddenly swung his arm and slapped him hard across the face. Hiss, oh my heavens! Beside them, Princess Jiari gasped in shock. The surrounding crowd was also stunned by my action. Hanichi's head was knocked askew by my blow, and he pressed his tongue against the inside of his cheek. Then, with his flushed face, he looked at me with utter adoration. Did I do something to upset Pianyu? How about slapping me a couple more times to vent your anger? It wasn't until later in my previous life that I found out, when Hanichi was mocked and felt disheartened, it was Shin Jiayuan who warmed his heart. Shin Jiayuan told him that one's background does not determine their future. All people are born equal, with no distinction between high and low, noble and humble. Are kings and nobles born with a special destiny? Just because of these few words, Shin Jiayuan instantly became the beloved white moonlight in Hanichi's heart. In Shin Jiayuan's twisted tale of woe, he saw me as a venomous-hearted villain, even taking secret pleasure in helping Shin Jiayuan retaliate against me. Yet, as the lowly son of a prostitute, Han Ichi had no choice but to flatter and cling to me, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's household. After all, my father is the Prime Minister, my mother is the Princess Royal, and the current emperor is my doting maternal uncle who cherishes me to the bone. As for Shin Jiayuan, she is merely an orphan girl living under our roof. If he could coax me into vowing to marry no one but him, he would achieve his dream of soaring to great heights. After all, with my help, he had already returned to the position of the Marquis's illegitimate son with great pomp and circumstance. At this thought, I picked up the wine cup on the table and splashed it in his face. The marriage contract between us is cancelled. He suddenly froze, not even bothering to wipe the wine from his face, and asked in shock, "Why, did I do something wrong?" Pianyu, I threw the wine glass aside, took out a handkerchief, and gently wiped my fingers. Your mother was a lowly prostitute who loved to climb into beds, and she even drove the Marquis's wife to depression and suicide. I find her disgusting. They say a crooked stick will have a crooked shadow, so you, the son of a prostitute, watching him turn pale with anger and unable to save face. I let out a scornful laugh and turned to leave the banquet. Princess Jiari looked as if she had seen a ghost and quickly rose to follow me out. In the carriage, she gazed at me for a long while with an expression that seemed to hold back words. Finally unable to restrain herself, she tugged at my sleeve and cautiously asked, "Are you not insane?" I burst out laughing. Her question didn't surprise me in the slightest, because ever since Hanichi saved me from the robbers 2 years ago, I've been madly in love with him. I didn't care that he was the son of a prostitute, helped him return to his roots and enter the Marquis estate, embroidered pouches, wrote love poems, and pledged our lives to each other in secret. My favoritism and affection for him were evident to all my family and friends. I remember Princess Jiari was just like that back then, cautiously asking me if I was bewitched, even suspecting that Hanichi had cast a love spell on me. I gently flicked Jiari's forehead and said seriously, "Of course I'm not crazy. I've just suddenly seen some people and some things clearly. In my past life, I was foolish, manipulated like a puppet, becoming the vicious supporting character and stepping stone in Shin Jiayuan's mouth. But in this life, I am no longer that dull lamb being led around by the nose. Instead, I am a vengeful spirit who has died once, and those who humiliated and harmed me will all be dragged down to hell by me." Since it was still early, I accompanied Jiari back to the palace to visit my uncle, the emperor. It wasn't until after I had finished dinner at the palace that I leisurely made my way back to the Lin residence. I had thought that after I beat Shen Jiayuan so badly, she would at least hide in her own courtyard for 10 days to half a month, but to my surprise, she actually went crying to my father and elder brother with a face swollen like a pig's head to complain about me. Miss, Master Lin and the young master are furious. They say they're going to subject you to family discipline. Nanny Wang, who serves my mother, had been waiting for me at the gate. As soon as I stepped down from the carriage, she hurried over with an anxious look. Madam's intention is for you to show sincere remorse and try to get away with kneeling in the ancestral hall. I smiled gently and smoothed my hair by my temple. Don't worry, Nanny, I have my own way to handle this. As soon as I entered the main hall, I saw my elder brother Lin Qingwu, tall and slender. He wore a moon-white robe, his face cold as he looked at me. Lin Pianyue, come here. I glanced at Shen Jiayuan, who was covering her face with a white veil in an affected manner. And then at Han Ichi standing in the corner with a gloomy expression. Then, lifting the hem of my skirt, I walked toward him with a grin. What's the matter, brother? Why the long face? Lin Qingwu's expression turned icy, his eyes sharp as if concealing blades, arrogant and unreasonable, domineering and overbearing. Beating the orphan of a general in public. Lin Pianyue, have you learned all these years of propriety, righteousness, integrity, and shame only to feed them to the dogs? I raised a brow lightly, tilting my head in confusion. Beating the orphan of a general? Who, me, TSK, though you are my elder brother, you can't just fling baseless accusations at your sister. Where's the evidence? A flicker of disgust crossed Lin Qingwu's eyes as he coldly snapped, sharp-tongued and cunning, your excuses are useless. Kneel down, prepare for the family punishment. Hiding behind Lin Qingwu, Shen Jiayuan shot me a smug and provocative glance. I sighed and said, enough of your nagging, father hasn't even spoken yet. I wasn't aware that my elder brother had become the head of the Lin household. Ignoring his pale and flustered expression, I looked coldly at Shen Jiayuan and sneered, what were you so smug about just now, proud that someone has your back? Or do you think this can hurt me, always scheming behind the scenes, like a stinky bug in the gutter every day? Then, covering my nose in disgust, I exclaimed exaggeratedly, oh my, could it be that you really are a stinky bug, or did you fall into a cesspit? Why do you smell so awful? Shen Jiayuan stumbled and fell into a chair, on the verge of tears, saying, why does Miss Lin keep humiliating me? I sob, watching the humiliated and weeping Shen Jiayuan. Han Ichi felt heartbroken and spoke up, seemingly trying to smooth things over. Pianyue, Shen Jiayuan is young and doesn't know better. She might have unintentionally offended you. But hitting someone is really a bit. Stop, I cut him off directly. TSK, I almost forgot about you. I looked him up and down with a disdainful tone. What do you think you are? The engagement is cancelled. How dare you meddle in my affairs? Also, don't call me Pianyue. Don't you dare dream of soaring to the top like a phoenix, you son of a prostitute. Take a look at yourself. Do you even deserve me? Silence. Lin Qingwu shouted angrily. Such insolence, such vulgarity, such lack of upbringing. Lin Pianyue, where did you learn such foul language? I shrugged indifferently. Nothing special, just learned by osmosis. In fact, in my previous life, my elder brother and I had no affection for each other. He always harbored an inexplicable hostility toward me, often mistreating me where others couldn't see. Sometimes he deliberately led me to eat moldy, hairy pastries, causing me to vomit, have diarrhea, and run a high fever. Another time during the scorching summer heat, he told me that snakes were cool to the touch and the most comfortable to sleep with. He threw my favorite ball into the lake and said if I wanted it, I should go get it myself. Come to think of it, I really have a strong will to live. As I grew older, I came to understand that my brother actually disliked me, so I consciously distanced myself from him, only exchanging polite greetings when we met. It wasn't until Shen Jiayuan's father entrusted her to my father on his deathbed and she moved into the Lin residence temporarily that I saw another side of my elder brother. He would personally cook longevity noodles for Shen Jiayuan, hold her in his arms when she was sad, and gently wipe away her tears. He took her to release lanterns, admire the moon, and share drinks together. In the end, She even ordered my execution by 1,000 cuts, and then stabbed me to death with a sword. So, isn't it just a matter of being influenced by what one sees and hears, after experiencing so much filth? Who could remain innocent and naive like a well-bred lady? Everyone, be quiet. What's with all this noisy clamoring? My father, who had been silent all along, finally spoke up, unable to stand it any longer. But the accusation was still directed at me. You unfilial daughter, how dare you not kneel down? I shook my head and said sincerely, I can't kneel, and I won't kneel. Before my father could voice his anger, I quickly lifted the hem of my skirt, revealing the yellow knee pads. This was made for me by Her Majesty the Empress herself. Then she touched the jeweled hairpin in her hair. This was placed in my hair by Her Majesty the Empress herself. Oh, and one more thing. I extended my hand, revealing a white jade thumb ring on my thumb. This was given to me by my uncle, the Emperor. Father, do you still want me to kneel, or, Father, do you dare to let me kneel? As soon as the words fell, everyone's expressions shifted, and the hall fell into an eerie silence. Father looked furious but dared not speak. His face flushed bright red, while Shun Jiayuan and Lin Qingwu's gazes were strikingly similar, filled with envy, resentment, and a barely concealed malice. In my previous life, I was considered well-educated and gentle, even somewhat timid, and I never used power to oppress others. Now that I've tried it, the feeling of wielding power is actually quite satisfying. Since things have come to this, I can't be bothered to deal with them any longer. Today, Shun Jiayuan invited me to the lake, where she slapped herself wildly before jumping into the water, declaring that she would take everything I have. I had no intention of arguing with her, so I left first. I never expected that after her plan failed, she would play the victim and accuse me first. Believe it or not, we can always take this to court and settle it there. With that, I turned and walked away. I stopped paying attention to those filthy hyenas, each with their own hidden agendas. In the dead of night, I lay in bed tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Shun Jiayuan truly had the audacity to turn the tables on me. It seems I'd been too lenient with her. In the darkness, I abruptly sat up. Xiao Li, come with me to set a fire. Watching the flames engulf the sky and hearing the panicked screams, I let out a satisfied laugh. Everyone who had just fallen asleep gathered together again, with Shun Jiayuan crouched in a corner, her face covered in soot, sobbing. When I saw my elder brother's cold gaze directed at me, I preemptively exclaimed in surprise, "Brother, what's with that look? You're not trying to frame me again, are you? It really hurts your sister's feelings. If this continues, let's just report it to the authorities." My father impatiently tapped the table and gave me a warning glance. Family scandals should not be aired in public. The fire was an accident. Let this matter rest here. Everyone, go back to sleep. Shun Jiayuan, make do in the neighboring courtyard for tonight, and we'll arrange another one for you tomorrow. The head of the household had spoken, and no one raised any further objections. Shun Jiayuan shot me a fierce glare, filled with resentment and unwillingness. I slowly curved my lips into a mysterious smile at her. After the arson incident, it felt as though I had completely unblocked my meridians. Throwing the hornet's nest into Shun Jiayuan's bedroom, I innocently spread my hands. It really was an accident. If you don't believe me, go ahead and report it to the authorities. Deliberately pushing Shun Jiayuan into the water, I covered my mouth in feigned shock. What? Trying to play the frame-up game again, she cut a large hole in her newly made dress, making her lose face in public, in front of the whole family. I said with a sarcastic tone, "Sister Shun, if you have any grievances against our Lin family, just say it outright. There's no need to dress in such a shabby way to play the victim in front of outsiders." I had truly mastered the art of turning the tables, leaving her speechless every time, forcing her to swallow her anger and endure the humiliation. Of course, she also tried to fight back, but now she was still powerless and had to maintain her image of an innocent, non-confrontational flower, so she couldn't stir up much trouble. They only managed to bribe some petty thugs and beggars to spread rumors that the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter was mistreating the orphaned child of the general, claiming she was two-faced and ruthless. I firmly believe that money can make the devil turn the millstone, so I countered by spending even more silver. Overnight, The rumors shifted to suggest that Shen Jiayuan was impure in heart and promiscuous by nature, flirting with Lin Qingwu while also being intimate with Han Ichi. The effect was remarkable. Compared to two women pulling each other's hair, the world was far more intrigued by the romantic entanglements of one woman and two men. She finally couldn't hold back and approached me. Speaking with sincerity, "Sorry, I admit I can't beat you, so could you please let me go?" I raised an eyebrow mockingly, catching a fleeting glimpse of fierce resentment deep in her eyes. She sure knows how to bend and stretch, but unfortunately, I won't fall into the same pit twice. If you want me to let you go, it's actually very simple, just go die. Her eyes widened, and her body trembled with anger. Yet, in the end, she didn't dare lay a hand on me. Because she knew that if she dared to pull any tricks, she would face my even fiercer retaliation. Even if she were some kind of time-traveling woman, there was nothing she could do. TSK, it feels so good to bully others with power. Damn it, Lin Pianyue, don't be so arrogant. Even a rabbit will bite when cornered. Shen Jiayuan finally couldn't hold back and revealed her true colors. Her originally innocent and pitiful face was now full of ferocity as she snarled at me viciously. "I will have power sooner or later, so just let you be smug for a while longer. When the time comes, I'll make you kneel and beg me in tears." Shen Jiayuan stared at me intently, her eyes filled with resentment and malice. I lazily twisted the thumb ring and ordered, "Xiao Li, tell the small kitchen that tonight I want to eat spicy rabbit meat and charcoal-grilled rabbit legs." Then, I casually slapped Shen Jiayuan once more and turned to leave indifferently, leaving her with just one sentence. "Oh, then I wish you success, miss." For the next 2 months, Shen Jiayuan kept avoiding me. I know she is conserving her energy, preparing to shine brightly at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. The late emperor was struck by a poisoned arrow during his personal expedition and, despite enduring for 2 months, ultimately succumbed to his injuries. This has always been a source of pain for the Empress Dowager. In her previous life, Shen Jiayuan's recitation of the line, "With lofty spirit I'd feed on the Hun's flesh, laughing, I'd quench my thirst with the blood of the Xiongnu," stunned the entire audience. Not only did it win her the Empress Dowager's favor and protection, but it also earned her the admiration of everyone present. They all praised her, saying she truly lived up to being the daughter of a military family. Although I am known as the top talented woman in the capital, I have to admit that my musical composition pales in comparison to this timeless masterpiece. At that time, Han Ichi seemed completely oblivious to my disappointment. His deep, affectionate peach blossom eyes followed Shen Jiayuan, filled with excitement and pride. Shen Jiayuan's brilliance seemed to be a tremendous honor to him. It's just that I was like a fool back then, so caught up in his deep affection and sweet talk that I completely failed to notice his admiration for Shen Jiayuan. There was still a month left until the Empress Dowager's birthday. I couldn't be bothered to engage in petty squabbles with Shen Jiayuan, so I quietly left for a town beyond the frontier. It didn't take much effort for my people to uncover an interesting piece of news. It is said that half a month ago, the butcher's foolish son, Xiao Fan, fell from a tree. After waking from his coma, his personality underwent a drastic change. He shed his former foolish and erratic demeanor, becoming full of vitality and vigor. Not only did his behavior become poised and dignified, but despite being illiterate, he even picked up a brush and wrote a timeless masterpiece of a poem. He also took to tinkering with strange inventions, creating iron balls called gunpowder, which repeatedly exploded and killed enemy barbarians who had been slaughtering the common people. What a coincidence! That timeless masterpiece he composed was actually created by Shen Jiayuan in her previous life. No surprise, he must be one of those so-called transmigrators. But in the last life, after his poem reached the capital and plunged Shen Jiayuan into a plagiarism scandal, he simply vanished without a trace. Given Shen Jiayuan's temperament, it's highly likely he was silenced for good. Not with Shen Jiayuan, then he can be recruited. I ordered someone to capture Xiao Fan and bring him to me. In the inn, he was tied to a chair, looking at me with pleading eyes. I got straight to the point. "I know you're a time traveler. Perhaps we can become allies." His eyes suddenly widened, staring at me in disbelief. Holy crap. I poured myself a cup of tea and said calmly, "I want all the poetry and songs widely circulated in your place. In return, whatever you wish to do, I will unconditionally support and protect you. Fighting on the battlefield, doing business nationwide, getting promoted and making a fortune, farmland and mansions, etc. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. I gazed at him quietly. After a long while, he finally spoke in a hoarse voice. May I ask what your identity is? Me, royalty. Xiao Fan was also a straightforward person. After a moment of thought, he no longer concealed his ambition and declared clearly, all right, it's a deal. May I also dare to ask, miss? Are you married or do you have someone you fancy? Me, how dare you? I stayed in this border town for over half a month, and it wasn't until 3 days before the Empress Dowager's birthday that I returned to the Lin residence. Coincidentally, I happened to see Lin Qingwu and Han Ichi walking out side by side from Shen Jiayuan's courtyard. When he saw me, Han Ichi quickly walked over, speaking with a mix of grievance and confusion. Pianyue, are you still angry with me? I rolled my eyes impatiently, took a step back, and said with disgust and rejection, stay away from me, you're filthy, and honestly, aren't you tired of putting on this act all day long? If you like Shen Jiayuan, just go and confess your feelings. Why bother trying to win me over every day? One cannot have it both ways. Like your prostitute mother, she could have just taken the silver and left after giving birth to you through shady means. Why did she have to fight for the position of the Marquis's main wife? She didn't even consider whether she was worthy of it. Well, in the end, she met a terrible death. You should take this as a warning. As I spoke, Han Ichi's face grew increasingly dark, as if a terrible storm was brewing in his eyes. I let out a scornful laugh and chose to ignore it. Of course, I didn't let Lin Qingwu, who was standing nearby, off the hook either. I sighed with disappointment and said, brother, you should step up your game too. Don't end up creating a shocking scandal of one woman serving 2 husbands. I still remember the scene from my past life when I was being executed by 1,000 cuts. Shen Jiayuan held one man's hand with each of hers, kissing one on the left and caressing the other on the right, a truly eye-searing spectacle. She really was a skilled seductress, managing to make 2 men willingly love her and share her. Seeing Lin Qingwu's face turn pale and green with anger, I finally returned to the courtyard satisfied. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the day of the Empress Dowager's birthday, Shen Jiayuan, who had been avoiding me for months, suddenly grew bold. At the entrance of the Lin residence, she strode quickly to my side, her eyes brimming with triumphant satisfaction. I glanced at her, thinking she had come to deliver a warning. Just as I expected, Lin Pianyue, do you think your noble status can protect you for a lifetime? Today, I will let you experience what it feels like to fall from heaven into hell. I told you, everything you possess will be taken away from you one by one, be it family, friends, or status. She might have truly been suppressed under my shadow for too long, foolishly babbling and provoking me non-stop in my ear. I stopped in my tracks, turned my head, and gave her a friendly smile. Say one more word, and I'll make you relive the experience of rolling around in a cesspit. Shen Jiayuan's face instantly darkened, and she stormed off in a huff. Much more peaceful now. From Shen Jiayuan's harsh words, it wasn't hard to guess that she not only intended to shine at this birthday banquet but also wanted to crush me underfoot in the process. I touched the small medicine pouch at my waist, feeling much more at ease. In this life, the enemy is in the open while I am in the shadows, so this grand play will be directed by me, as expected. The one who came looking for me was still Han Ichi. In the small pavilion hidden by the trees, Xiao Li was knocked unconscious by Han Ichi's palm strike and collapsed limply to the ground. I looked at him coldly. This is the Imperial Palace, what do you intend to do? The usual gentleness and affection on Han Ichi's face vanished, replaced by a pair of pitch-black eyes that were dark and unfathomable. His voice was hoarse, carrying a chilling indifference that felt unsettling. Pianyue. To be honest, half a year ago, I never imagined we would end up like this. I turned and sat on the stone bench, speaking calmly. Enough with the nonsense. What exactly do you want? He seemed not to hear, continuing to speak as if to himself. You are of noble status and lack nothing. Even if you committed a heinous crime, the emperor would protect you. But Ayuan is different. Her life has been too bitter. She has already endured so much hardship, treading carefully every day to avoid you. Why must you still bully her? What gives you the right to bully her? Ayuan is full of talent. Today is the most important day of her life. I believe that from this day forward, her reputation for brilliance will spread throughout the land." He suddenly reached out and pinched my chin, pulling out a dark red pill and trying to force it into my mouth. "It's a pity that two moons cannot exist in the sky at the same time. P&U, the one that must sink can only be you." I swept the teacup to the floor, and in the next instant, Hanichi was abruptly pinned to the ground by two men in black. The cold, grim expression on his face hadn't even had time to change. I crouched down, patting his cheek mockingly and said, "You were going to drug me, and if I'm not mistaken, the hostage prince from the enemy nation is waiting for me in the side hall, right? Because you want to frame me for Shinjiayuan accidentally colluding with the enemy and selling out the nation, which led to the complete annihilation of her father's troops." Han Ichi's suddenly stiffened body confirmed my speculation. I pulled out a hairpin and forcefully stabbed it into his palm, delighting in his muffled groan of pain. Truly worthy of a low-born prostitute's son, a full-grown man resorting to such despicable tricks. Since you wish to ruin my reputation and have me scorned by all, don't blame me for giving you a taste of your own medicine. I took out the paper packet from my waist and poured all the white powder into his mouth. Before my eyes, his face flushed visibly, and even his breathing grew heavy and feverish. Looking down at Hanichi from above, "Enjoy your wedding night to the fullest." I took out another medicine packet and handed it to the shadow guard. "Feed this to that damn hostage, then throw the two of them onto the bed and lock the doors and windows." Half an hour later, set a big fire in the courtyard. Hanichi's face changed dramatically, instantly realizing something, and he cried out in terror, "No, don't." Before he could finish speaking, he was swiftly dragged away by the shadow guard. Indeed, the shadow guard borrowed from the emperor uncle was truly effective. I sat in the pavilion for a while longer, waiting until Xiao Li woke from her unconscious state, and then we hurried to the banquet. By my estimation, the grand drama orchestrated by Shinjiayuan was about to begin. No sooner had I returned to the banquet and taken my seat than Jiari tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "I've had all the poetry booklets you gave me distributed, except for Lin Qingwu and Shinjiayuan." I glanced around and noticed that each person's small table had a thick booklet on it, and a few officials were gesturing animatedly as they discussed, their faces filled with delight. Lin Qingwu, ever proud, sat alone sipping clear wine, maintaining his aloof and ethereal noble image, naturally unwilling to ask others what they were watching. Shinjiayuan sat at the very end, and with rumors subtly circulating about my discord with her, no one was willing to speak to her. Jiao Yi and I chatted, enjoying the dance and music, until Shinjiayuan announced she would perform a piece, at which point we fell silent. Just as in the previous life, she played a sorrowful and indignant melody as she stepped toward the center, successfully drawing everyone's attention to herself. She stopped playing the flute and read aloud, "With wrath my hair stands on end," leaning on the railing. As she recited the poem, everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at her with astonishment in their eyes. Seeing the crowd stunned by her, Shinjiayuan was extremely pleased, her voice growing even more resounding and forceful. "With lofty spirit I'd feed on the Hun's flesh," laughing, "I'd quench my thirst with the barbarian's blood." Lifting her head and turning around, Shinjiayuan's gaze suddenly met my intrigued eyes, and the poem on her lips abruptly faltered. Eyes wide with shock, she even exclaimed aloud, "Lin Pianue, what are you doing here?" I curled my lips into a smile and did not answer. Before she could press further, the Minister of Rites suddenly asked Shinjiayuan, "Miss Shin, this poem was clearly written by the reclusive master Yu Fei. Why did you claim it as your own?" At this, Shinjiayuan no longer had time to wonder why I was there. His mouth hung wide open as he stared at the Minister of Rites, his expression utterly horrified. How do you know about Yu Fei?" The Minister of Rites shook his head and smiled. "Not just him, there's also—"
"You also know that Shinjiayuan was plagiarizing, right? Then what are you questioning me for now? Blaming me for collecting these poems and not letting Shinjiayuan, the plagiarist, become famous throughout the world?" Lin Qingwu was left speechless by my retort, and it took him a long moment to squeeze out a few venomous words through gritted teeth. "You're just born evil. I should have strangled or drowned you back then." I clicked my tongue twice. "I don't know where your hostility toward me comes from, but I suppose it's probably just that bloodline issue. But brother, I hold grudges very well. so you'd better be careful walking at night lately. Lin Qingwu turned away coldly, leaving only 5 words, "I'll see it through to the end." Ambitious, but utterly useless. I clapped my hands, and 2 hidden guards silently appeared in the room. Within 3 days, I want his tendons in his hands and feet severed. It would be best if he ends up paralyzed in bed, unable to take care of himself. Remember, make sure you don't kill him. Yes, after the suffering of my past life, I've come to understand that death is the easiest way out. The best form of revenge is to make them live a life worse than death, suffering in agony. I went to the dungeon to see Shen Jiayuan, the hostage from the enemy country, unable to endure the severe torture, admitted that Shen Jiayuan had revealed the marching route to him when she accompanied her father into the palace. The emperor was furious, but considering she was the only descendant of General Shen, he only sentenced her to lifelong imprisonment. However, being imprisoned for life in a dungeon is worse than death. In just a few days, the dark and foul-smelling dungeon had tormented her beyond recognition. Upon seeing me, she scrambled and threw herself to the ground, letting out a resentful roar. It's you, isn't it? You're a time traveler." I looked at her with a smile but said nothing. She suddenly understood and exclaimed, No wonder that foolish Lin Pianyue suddenly became so shrewd and hard to deal with. Family. We are both time travelers. Please beg the emperor to release me. Once we're out, if we join forces, we can surely create a new world together. Shen Jiayuan saw me as her last lifeline. If it weren't for the unmistakable calculation and venom in her eyes, I might have believed she truly wanted to turn over a new leaf. I took a step back and smiled. No. Under Shen Jiayuan's stunned gaze, I ordered the jailer. Find someone to cut out her tongue to prevent her from secretly biting it to commit suicide. I don't want her to die, but I don't want her to live well either. Understand what I mean? The jailers in the dungeon were all seasoned veterans, and they hurriedly replied in succession. Don't worry, Miss Lin. I have plenty of experience with this kind of thing. I was in a rather good mood, humming a little tune as I walked away, leaving Shen Jiayuan behind to scream, curse, cry, and beg for mercy. As for that scumbag Hanichi, I had no intention of paying him any more attention. After such a disgraceful incident and being expelled from the Marquis's mansion, he was practically no different from dead. I just never expected that he would actually seek me out on his own. He limped over to me, and when he noticed me staring at a certain part of him, a flicker of embarrassment crossed his face, his voice low and hoarse. These days, I am endlessly grateful that you came back early. That you changed everything, that you are still alive. I suddenly looked up, staring at him in disbelief. Clearly, he hadn't been doing well either. His back was hunched, he looked disheveled, and his eyes were dull and lifeless. But his expression was so unfamiliar, like relief, like reluctance. How absurd. Hanichi has actually been reborn as well. I scoffed lightly. What, now that your beloved Shen Jiayuan has fallen, you're trying to cozy up to me again? Is that it? No. That's not it, he explained anxiously. I regret it. I shouldn't have believed her words. Clearly the most innocent one is you. In my past life, I was blinded by Shen Jiayuan. She colluded with enemy nations, played both sides, and our people suffered in dire straits every day. Enough. I cut him off directly. I looked straight into his eyes and said coldly, whether you've been reborn or not, whether you regret it or not, it means nothing to me. All I know is that you, Shen Jiayuan, and Lin Qingwu, the fate you meet in this lifetime is exactly what you deserve. Get lost. I don't want to hear what happened in my past life, and I don't want to see you again. The Lin mansion is nothing but a cage to me. In this new life, I have no intention of following the same path as other women, marrying at the right age, then spending a lifetime serving a husband and raising children, after staying in the imperial palace for a month and bidding farewell to my reclusive mother. I embarked on a new journey. As for my father, ever since his good son Lin Qingwu became paralyzed, he has been taking his only son everywhere seeking medical treatment. It's just as well I don't want to see them anyway. To avoid ruining my mood, on the road, Xiao Li asked me excitedly, Miss, where are we going to play? I smiled brightly. The world is vast, and home is wherever we roam. For the first stop, let's go to Yangcheng. Inside the box, there were letters from Xiao Fan, dozens of them, all boasting about the transformed appearance of Yangcheng after his renovations. Milk tea, hot pot, small cakes, unheard of, landmines, bombs, little cannons, never seen anything like it. But undeniably, he had successfully piqued my curiosity. Laughing and playing around with Xiao Li along the way, I left all the miserable past behind me. After all, my exciting life had just begun. Completed.